Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two. Yeah. Let's do this.
I love that I post that on Instagram stories and no one can hear music. It's just us dancing to an intro over headphones.
It's fine.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, well, welcome back to Bigfoot Collectors Club, everybody.
Yay.
It's the show where we talk about personal paranormal histories with amazing guests and share stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
and your trusty producer,
Riley Bray.
Hi, boys.
Hey, man.
How's it going?
Great.
We had a
Awesome.
big night out last night.
Yeah.
We went to the premiere of Jeremy Corbell's Bob Lazar Flying Saucers in Area 51.
Out on the town.
Yeah. I
was
love
awesome.
going out on the town with you guys.
Yeah, what a wild success that was for him. And congratulations to Jeremy Corbell, former past guest and hopefully future guest. I think he did what a big success that was for him. A sold out show.
Sold out the Ace Theater.
Dude,
man.
that place was packed full of people.
It was
Lines
jamming.
around the block.
Popping my peas. It
Yeah.
was so packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool to see George Knapp up on stage. And
That was cool.
Bob Lazar came out of obscurity to talk for this film and talk in public. He's got a lot of social anxiety, that guy.
Yeah. Killer Red Kicks.
Probably
though.
good reason. Yeah, he had some nice
Nice Converse.
Chuck
Converse.
Taylor's. But yeah, we had a great time there, and we were reporting all about that. It'll be up on the Patreon. We'll do a little special report from the premiere of that movie where we get into a little bit more about the movie and our opinions of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a fun night. I like hanging out with you
and
boys.
a fascinating discussion I thought that we just had. So check out our Patreon because we have some varying.
I'm no longer a believer. That's all I'll say. In any of this stuff, I've gone full Scully.
well, it's about time.
And then wait till you get to my
Not
high
me. I'm
strangeness
doubling
today.
down. I'm doubling down.
I have no right claiming to be a skeptic after the shit I'm about to pull in this episode. It's insane.
I love your flip-flopping on skepticism. You're like, I'm a skeptic now. And then you're like, there's an alien in this mirror.
Seriously, man.
But look, you guys can see the alien in the mirror. You guys can see it, right? I am showing some evidence. I have no proof. I also fully admit I might be crazy. All right? I'm not claiming to be right about anything.
Listen,
I just like the stories.
Fine. Food Steam Ghost. It's real.
Oh, by the way, I do want to follow up.
Yeah.
Susie Gardner specifically said to me and to Adela Levine, the food was not hot, and it's not steam.
There you go.
The controversy's alive. This is over
Controversy's
on
been
the.
solved.
This is a series of photos I took. I'm about to introduce our guest. It's up. We covered it on the Patreon a little bit last week on the show, but I caught a glimpse of maybe an alien in a mirror at Thanksgiving and a ghost.
Yeah. So they're tumbling around in the same washer machine.
Yeah. I know, it's true. All right, let's bring in our guest. She is a good friend of mine, an actress of stage and screen. You've seen her in films like Fruitvale Station, The Help, Jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ahna O'Reilly to the show.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for coming to the
Hi.
shit.
I'm so excited.
Wow.
So how did you... We were talking about... I think I told you about this. We were at a birthday party.
Yeah, we were at Maggie's birthday party.
Maggie's birthday. Maggie's
Yeah.
been on the show since then. And then I think you listened to the Adela Levine episode.
Yes.
And you were like, what's happening?
I was like, I need to meet her immediately.
Yeah.
Totally, right?
And I haven't yet, but I loved that second episode. Really hoping to stumble upon her at the Mystic Journey bookstore
Totally.
someday.
Well,
or attend.
I know. You're out of town, right? Did we
yes.
talk about this?
Yes.
We're doing another gallery
Devastated.
reading.
Have you ever been to a psychic or a medium or anything like that?
I've talked to psychics.
Yeah.
I've never been to a medium.
Right.
And I can't say that that's something that's I'm definitely interested in, but listening to her, I'm just so curious
Right.
to be in a room with her. And
It is fascinating, isn't it? You're kind of like, I've felt this often. I was like, I want to get a one-on-one and just get into some real shit.
Yeah, I kind of do too. I mean, she and I have texted. Hi, Adela, if you're listening. She and I text over Instagram and stuff back and forth. Obviously, I was in touch with her about this whole alien conspiracy.
Well, yeah, you needed her to weigh in. That makes sense.
But I basically now I'm just like, am I crazy? Because if the medium says you're nuts, then you know that you're a rebel.
Totally.
There are people I've known that do like astrology therapists. She's like your medium therapist.
Right.
Totally. Oh, wait a
Totally.
minute. Is this, can you name drop this person? I think
I don't think I can name drop,
okay.
not because I just don't remember who it was, but I feel like the other day someone was like, yeah, when I first moved to LA, I had an astrologer therapist. And I was like, what?
Is her name Heidi Rose?
No, but I know Heidi Rose.
Because Elizabeth Lame has recommended Heidi Rose.
I didn't know she was a therapist. I know her.
I don't think she's
okay.
I take it. I don't think she's a therapist, but she does do. Don't listen. Honest taking off her jacket and pretending like she's going to ruin the podcast if we hear the leather
noise.
Scraping against the couch.
Okay.
I forget her last name. Anyway,
Heidi Rose Robbins.
Yes, and she's an astrologist.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She does charts. I hear she's amazing.
She's amazing.
I need to go see her. I really want to go
comeback.
see her.
Yeah, you should.
Have you ever
got good vibes? She's like a kind, nice person.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend it.
So you've gotten your chart done?
Oh, many times.
And what can you tell us a little bit about what your chart says about you and what you found to be true or not true about it?
Oh, that's, well, it's like a lot of these things that I'm interested in that you guys talk about. I never go fully down the rabbit hole. Like I'll dip my toe in and I like to do it and then I'll repeat it, but I don't speak the language of astrology deeply. I can tell you.
I certainly don't.
Yeah, it's interesting every time and it's always fun to have a different interpretation of what it's saying about you, but
have you ever?
Oh, I was going to say, I know what you mean. I think I was on Instagram or something, but this, how they have those little quotes. But and I was also reading or listening to somebody who was saying astrology is making a big kind of comeback. Where it's kind of on the rise again. But there is something too about, numbers don't lie, and when you're born on a specific date and the stars are in a specific time and place at that time, I think there's a reading that you could pull from that. You know, there was a great book I read.
Sexual astrology.
No, but it was a guy by Dan Millman. He wrote Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I'm not sure you're familiar with that book, but he wrote a book called The Life You Were Born to Live, and it had you had to like calculate you would enter your birth date, and then you would like do some quick little math or something, and it would lead you to there was a chart to where you could go to like read about
middle
yourself.
Management.
Right. Sort of numeral astrology. But I found it so profound and insightful as like, I was like, there's got to be something to this. I mean, because, anybody can like, if you read like a Sunday astrology thing, like anybody can kind of like, hey, that's me, you know, and you could do it for whether you're Scorpio or Aries, you could you read any old reading and find something that's true for you. But this was so like detailed and like it had like negative qualities of your to watch out for and positive aspects. And I found it to be very true.
Yeah, I love all that.
Which added to the mystery.
There's so much that goes into a chart reading, but I think that the thing that can be harmful is if you see someone that's maybe not so good or you don't connect with, that they can, implant limiting beliefs about yourself. And then that's not good because then you're like, oh, no, I'm
Don't
not
ever go to Tahiti.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You're like, why? I've always wanted to.
Yeah.
I
love that stuff.
Yeah, there's like that whole like there is a branch to all this. It's a little huckster where people are like, the only way to fix this is if you come back and see me again and that kind of stuff. I think you can kind of...
Well, not even just that, but also like
passes.
if someone sort of tells you this is how you are, and then they keep reinforcing that over and over again, you're like, oh, I'm a very introspective person, and someone keeps telling you that, then you start you just believe it because you've told yourself so many times.
Yeah.
I think that can be a danger.
So you've never had a thing where you went in and you were like, she said this and it came true.
I spoke to an astrologer once who's a more, I think, Eastern astrologer, and that was more predictive. And he gave me certain dates, and this was a few years ago, of like just transformational dates where things were really going to change. And here's a high point, here's a low point. And they were so dead on with transitions my life was making. And he wasn't saying specific things, but he was giving specific time frames of dates.
That's wild.
And I feel like my life did kind of, when I look back, I was like, whoa, that's when I picked up and moved and started this great job. And then this is when it ended. And so that was fun. But I haven't talked to him again because there's also something, I'm like, well, it's cool to know that, but it didn't change how I approached that month or something.
What we're learning about your personal paranormal history is that you're a very practical person. I thought you were like, but I didn't go back to him because he kept calling me. And
oh my God, no.
Asking me out.
But he would say things like, don't go swimming on this day.
Oh, wow.
Or like, don't. He never said anything like that to me, but to one of my sisters, he's like, you should never ride a bike. I was like, I don't really want to hear that stuff. I don't
Has
think.
she rode a bike since?
I don't know.
He's like, don't swim a half an hour after you eat. I sense danger.
And cramps.
He's like the Doctor Strange of wives' tales. I went to the Crystal Palace in, I think that's the name of it, in Sedona, Arizona. This has been about 10 years ago. And I just come off like a really great year of work where I'd like worked 10 months straight, which is a crazy amount for an actor. And I'd like filmed a movie in Morocco and I'd been doing a TV series in Vancouver. And I was like in New York for a couple months. And I was just like, man, I'm on a roll. And I was like coming back to LA for pilot season. And I stopped in Sedona. And I got my chart read, and I was just like, this is going to be a great year. You know? And then she looked at my chart, and she's like, yeah, you're like, your career's about to slow down.
Oh my God.
And I was like, no, it's not. I'm sorry.
I'm in fuego.
She's like, yeah, it's going to be a while until you feel like you're where you need to be. She's like, and she kind of like looked a little concerned, and I felt like she was holding back some stuff that she didn't want to tell me. And I was like, come on, I'm on fire. And I went back to LA, and I did not book a job for like a year and a half. It was, I went from like, it was like that really weird lesson, you know, and she was like, totally right. And she was like, it's going to be years before you're like where you want to be. And I'm like,
that's why I think it's important to go to people that are referred by friends and that have a good, generous and kind approach to it. And Heidi Rose Robbins she's amazing at that. Like she just has she's not out there telling you what is and isn't going to happen, but more like this is really important for you and how you approach your day and your creativity and your work and your it's more about you and how to.
I don't know. I kind of want that straight talk. Like, don't blow smokes. Like, give me the good stuff. You're just, it's not good for you.
Yeah.
The next 3 years, you got to get your shit together.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, psychic lady.
Psychic lady.
So growing up, did you ever experience anything beyond talking to psychics? Were you scared of ghosts? Were you into UFOs at all? You said you don't go down the rabbit hole, but were there any ghost stories in your family?
Well, I think that I don't go down the rabbit hole because I grew up in a family that's very open about all this stuff.
Oh, really?
My parents met through something called
a cult?
The Psychic Friends Network.
No
but
way.
Not, there's like a very famous one that not Donna Summers, but some like 70s disco.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not that one. There was I don't know, Bay Area. They met at some hot springs through this community of psychic people. Yeah, so my parents are very into all that, and so I just grew up with that as normal conversation. So I wasn't like, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. Just like,
it's usually the opposite with our guests. Usually I came from a very, strict Catholic upbringing but not the case with you. That's wild.
Well, my dad was from a very strict Catholic upbringing. So I think that's what led him to
rebel.
I want to hear more about, what is the psychic community?
Psychic Friends Network.
Psychic Friends Network. And there was just like a community in the Bay Area.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Where would they meet up?
I don't know. I got to ask more questions.
That's what I'm doing.
But I know that the first time my parents met was in a hot springs, and I don't know. I don't know.
Are you sure it wasn't a nudist colony? Because it's starting to sound like a nudist colony.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because you're from what? The Modesto area?
From Palo Alto.
Palo Alto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they like very like kind of like crystal people? Like, are they into like aliens and ghosts and all that stuff?
No, not really. In
No?
fact, I think
Okay.
they would be like, anytime I've referred to them as hippies, I think they're kind of like offended.
Right.
So yeah, no, you would never meet them and
Suspect
think this.
Right. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Wow. I bet your dad had a big bush back in the 70s just going to the nudist colony.
Oh, dude. Michael Eugene Clayton.
Your middle name is Eugene?
No, actually, my dad's middle name is Eugene.
Oh yeah. See, there you
Did you
go.
know that?
No,
Or
I had no idea.
Psychic Friends
Wow.
Network.
Wow.
Bam. New
No,
members.
I
just
never
think-
Southern California chapter.
I'm sorry I took it out on your dad. I thought he was a safer target. I just picture all these like 70s couples running around with their big bushes up
That's
in
wild.
the Psychic Friends Network.
Well, besides your dad and your mom in the hot springs, what Anna, what is your personal paranormal history?
So I only have one time where I felt connected to someone that had just passed away. And maybe I'm grasping at straws here, but I was out of the country.
We don't do that on this
Yeah,
show.
okay, I feel safe. I was out of the country, and a family friend had passed away, and I kind of got lost in this city and decided to just walk into a random church, and I just then remembered, like, oh, today's the day they're having her memorial. And I'll say, I'm not religious, but I felt like going in and just kind of thinking about her. And I thought what I thought in my mind was, I said to her, you were a light. And just as I said the word light in this dark church, a light came on.
Ooh.
And I decided to read into that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you absolutely
That's
can.
cool.
That's a synchronicity of stellar proportions.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in a
like,
moment, in a church, thinking
Yeah.
of her, having the meditative moment.
Yeah. But other than that, I think I always wanted to be having more
Right.
ghost interactions. And
Yeah. And it wasn't long after she passed, or
yeah, she had passed, and then a few days earlier. And then I,
Yeah.
remembered that this was
You
then the day that they were having the memorial.
we have heard before, and from what I've read, there's there's kind of a small window when people pass where they can, kind of come back and visit loved ones or leave signs or messages, and it's usually within that first 3 to
It's
5
like a
days,
3
right?
day period or something.
Yeah.
I forget what culture that what
I think
Is it Buddhism? Were we talking about this recently?
Yeah.
Brittany
We were.
Shabashi or something, she would say that, right?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
something
Brittany
like
was
that.
talking
yeah,
about that.
But they're that 3 to 5 day window, and you get weird signs like that.
You
Yeah.
get to some time left on Earth to kind of hang out and turn on some lights and freak some
Yeah.
people out.
Right.
I loved it. I was
Yeah.
like, ooh,
That's cool.
cool.
What was your takeaway from that moment? I mean, is that something that you found affecting the way you saw the universe after that, or?
No, because it kind of fell within my belief system already. It was just I had never had an example of something so tangible.
Sure.
And so I was just like, oh yeah.
Well, let's talk. Yeah, let's talk about that. How did you get that belief system? Where does that come from, and what is it?
Oh, I mean, I think just my upbringing and my parents, I guess, and as I grew up, just questioning the way I grew up, like being like, oh no, this is really. I think what I believe in the afterlife. I believe in reincarnation. I was very excited to hear about Adela Levine's reincarnation, the way she spoke about it,
Oh,
and
right,
not believing it. I was like, oh wow, that really makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's cool. It sounds like you did not grow up with the fear of like hell.
I
Or
did
judgment.
not grow up with the fear of hell.
Yeah.
But I was very aware that that's how, I mean, I have like a seriously Catholic side of my family. And so I was very aware of that fear from them, but that's not a belief.
I somehow convinced myself one Halloween that the devil was going to visit me at midnight.
Oh yeah, I love
And I
that story.
spent all month long
Right.
Oh my God.
sleepless.
Oh my
Just
God.
came up with that story by myself. Thank you, church.
Right. Church.
So you believe in reincarnation?
Yeah, well, there was
what life were you on?
Oh, who knows?
Oh, what do you think?
Well, there was one we kind of had. I don't even know if to call her a doctor or a healer. That's what she should be called. But one person that my parents would take us to growing up, and still I go to her this day. She's in Northern California. She does muscle testing where she'll you lie on the table and then she'll ask your body is your body holding pain from when you were 4 years old? And she presses down on your arm and your body says yes or no. And you're there fully conscious and you don't have to say anything. She's just communicating.
But you're hearing this out loud.
Oh,
She's talking
hearing
out
this
loud.
out loud. And she's holding one arm above you, and then she has an assistant holding another arm, and she's pressing down on her assistant's arm. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever seen this?
I did this once.
Yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking
cool.
about. Yeah, it's very interesting.
But so what she does is you go in with a physical, and she was a biochemist, and you go in with maybe a physical ailment, and then she talks to your body, and then she'll ask is this something that happened when you were 3 or 4, or is this a past life? Okay. And then I don't know how she goes down her how she gets to where she arrives, but I remember the first session I remember having, she said something of I was having problems with my eyes, really dry eyes, and she ended up thinking or talking to my body, and I was a soldier in the French Revolution and something with gunpowder in my eyes. And then she asks your body, what supplements do you need? And then she holds the
wine. Yeah. I need more wine. Cheese.
Yeah.
Baguettes.
That's always the answer.
That was a beautiful representation of French culture.
Terrible.
Listen, I'm a quarter French. I can kid.
Oh jeez.
That's
wild.
fascinating. Wait,
Yeah.
so you've done this, Riley?
I actually did it just the latter part you're talking about with the supplements. I did it with an acupuncturist for allergies, and she would just hold the different things up and do the arm pressure test, and it turns out I'm allergic to wheat, dairy, and coffee, which is I just love pizza and coffee, so I haven't really taken heed to this advice in any way, shape, or form.
I don't know. I'm so confused with the assistant's role is in this, the one that she's also touching.
Did your person have an assistant?
Mine didn't. She would just hold
Touch
a
your
vial
body?
of the different thing over me and then test my arm strength as she tried the different things above me.
Yeah, this lady, and the reason why my mom started sending us to her was that my mom was allergic to wheat, and this woman cured her of that. Anyways, the assistant is on one side of you, and then she's on the other, and they're both touching you, and then their arms are above you. And I guess that the theory, I don't know,
Their arms are
because I've
touching
never
above
asked.
you, hand in
Yeah.
hand. Okay.
And then she presses down on the assistant's arm, and I guess he's like a conduit of you.
Cool.
But I've never,
interesting.
I just go.
rolling
I'm
with
just
it.
rolling with
I feel like
This is your version of a CAT scan. You're I don't know how it
Sure,
works. It's
let's do it.
technology.
I feel like it always comes down to supplements too. And at the end, they wheel open some door. My own personal supplements. It's we'll get you a bag. You'll need some of these, and
Yeah.
Do you remember the herb that helped your French Revolutionary
Absolutely
eyes
not. No.
work again?
No.
Did it help?
Yeah.
Do you remember feeling better after that?
I mean, no, this was so long ago. But I do know that I love the experience of going to her. And so I have one concrete example of her fixing something. I was having getting ulcers and dry mouth. And she was as long as you are in this relationship that you're in,
Oh, wow.
you will continue to always have these problems.
Yikes.
And then as soon as I was out of that relationship,
cleared up.
Whoa.
Very specific symptoms cleared up.
That's wild.
Now, where do you fall on that camp? Because isn't that sort of like here's how a way to live your life
self-fulfilling
thing?
prophecy.
Or just like earlier we were talking about you got to be careful that people who are like, do this and this will change. But it sounds like it's
I don't
justified.
know. Because it was physical stuff and not really things not thoughts I had.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I've gone into this woman always like, this is the person we go to, but also kind of skeptical. But I don't know.
I mean, I'm on board.
Yeah.
100%.
For sure. It's a strange universe we live in, and there's so many unexplainable things.
Well, and the brain is so mysterious, and I definitely believe there's a mental component to health.
Sure.
It just can't all just be like physical.
I think it's
Totally.
mostly mental in a lot of ways for me anyway. If my brain is not right, nothing in my body is feeling good.
Well, then you must be screwed.
I know. That's the problem.
Sorry, that was
I'm
too
like,
easy.
need to go up to
Just lobbing them up there.
Palo Alto and talk to this lady. I remember there was a minute in high school and where like me and some friends were really getting into past life regression, and one of my friends got a hold of like a thing where you could like lay down and talk yourself through to see some past lives. And I remember I was probably like 15, 16, and I remember being like I was like seeing myself in some old like Victorian mansion or house, like on some cliffs, and I was a woman, and like my lover like threw me over a cliff.
Oh my God.
And I remember a very vivid part of it was I looked in the mirror and I was like, I am hot and I have big boobs. That's all I can remember. And so I was just like a really hot chick. Like that was like, even my high school past life regression turned into some weird horny
Hey man,
fantasy.
those hormones are raging.
It's like couldn't get out. It's like Victorian is more like Victoria's Secret, It was like, but yeah, that's my only real experience with past lives.
I gotta read.
I was a hot lady who got thrown off a cliff.
Works.
Oh, many lives, many masters. I've never read it. I got to.
I haven't either. I've heard
People love it.
good things though. Yeah. Wild.
Riley, I feel like you have a lot of like of these kind of stories in your past that you haven't really like you've gone to some more holistic and Eastern sort of things, and I think Bryce and I definitely have.
I've had a lot of acupuncture. I really back acupuncture. I had
Never done it.
terrible
it's great.
tendinitis because I was working in a screen print shop and then practicing guitar like 7 hours a day. And I just blew out my wrist to the point that I couldn't work. I couldn't play. I was just done. And I went to an acupuncturist, and within like maybe a month, 2 months of regular treatment, it was just gone.
Wow.
And it blew me away.
They free up that chi, huh?
Yeah. And I talked to my dad about it. My dad's he's a surgeon. He's a very Western doctor, and he fully backs acupuncture too. And he's just like, there's a reason that's been around for thousands of years. It's like whether or not we can put a name on these energetic centers in the body. It's like there's very complex systems going on beyond just the physical systems, and I totally believe that.
Dude, I love that attitude. That's
for sure.
awesome.
Yeah.
I think that makes the most sense. Look, I think your dad just summarized basically what this whole podcast is about. It's like there's a reason a bunch of these stories are still around. There's reasons why these experiences are still around. We may not be able to put an exact name on it. Reality has such complex systems to it, so far beyond the fabric of which we don't really understand completely. And so that's kind of a great attitude to have going forward. I can remember that's good advice just in general.
I thought so too, yeah. Just because you can't put a name on it doesn't mean you should discount it.
Right.
It can be both.
Right. Interesting. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to play Bullshit or Believe It with our
Sweet.
guest, Ahna
Can't
O'Reilly.
What if I was the dude that pushed you off the cliff?
I think you were. I've come back.
Oh my God, this is like
for
some Cloud
revenge.
Atlas shit. You guys just keep doing this over and over again.
We've got to find out.
He was like some like robber baron guy. I don't know who he was. He wore a cape and a wide brim hat. I remember that.
I dig that.
I think it was in England.
You have a type.
It was very
Most definitely.
Yeah. All right. Anna, you've listened to the show, so you know how this game works. All right. So for our listeners, this is a rapid fire game. I'm going to go down a list of things, and Anna's going to say whether or not she believes in them or doesn't believe in them by saying bullshit or believe it.
Yeah.
And then we'll, if there's a sliding scale, we'll figure it out.
This is a window into her psyche.
Yeah. Here we go. This is our
I'm ready.
Our weird test that we put people through. All right. On your mark, get set. Ghosts.
Believe.
UFOs.
Believe.
Let's believe it.
Believe it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Bigfoot.
Believe it.
Angels.
Believe it.
Gnomes.
Bullshit.
Fairies.
Believe it.
Unicorns.
Bullshit.
Loch Ness Monster.
Believe it.
Alien Greys.
Believe it.
Parallel universes.
Believe it.
Reptilians disguising themselves as humans.
Believe it.
Nice.
Mermaids.
Bullshit.
Heaven.
Bullshit.
Hell.
Bullshit.
Dragons.
Bullshit.
Yeti.
Believe it.
Elves.
Believe it.
ESP.
Believe it.
Chupacabra.
Bullshit.
Demons.
Believe it.
Atlantis.
Believe it.
Life on other planets.
Believe it.
World peace.
Believe it.
Peace in the multiverse.
Believe it.
Oh, all right. This is a good one.
God,
You're
I
really
love
good
this
at that.
game.
You're very specific about each one. I kind of want to go through the whole thing.
Totally.
So I'm excited to hear you believe in Bigfoot.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
That gets a lot of
you won the game.
bullshit.
You basically won the game. So
I just think there has to be something to it.
totally. Yeah.
Right.
There's too much evidence to deny the existence of something out there.
Yeah.
I agree
And
with
whether
you.
or not it's in this dimension or in another, I just think that
Oh, I love you.
I believe it.
This is when I sound like the most hardcore crazy is when lately I've been like, people who do not believe in Bigfoot or I'll walk it even
Can get
further
the
back.
fuck
yeah,
out.
get the fuck out of my house. No, people who completely don't believe or aren't open to the idea of Bigfoot or UFOs, especially Bigfoot, they just haven't looked at it. They just haven't spent any time reading on some of this stuff. Now, there's plenty to make you go bullshit, but there's so much there, especially when, I don't know if you heard this episode. I don't think you would because it's up on the Patreon, but Cliff Barrickman, I think, made such a good case in that interview with you, Bryce.
For sure.
For the existence of a very biological primate, like flesh and blood species. I mean, down to the fact he's like, there's probably only 75 in existence everywhere, which is just like fascinating.
He almost convinced me that it wasn't interdimensional.
Yeah,
which is a
he did
lot
a really
to
good
do.
job. He did a really good job too of like bringing it back down to earth. We've got to get him on the regular shows.
Yeah,
next
I'm
time
not sure
he's
if you're
in town.
familiar with who Cliff Barrickman is. He was
No.
one of the cast members on Finding Bigfoot, and he's very scientifically based, and he's one of the leading trackway experts in the world. He has a collection second only to possibly Jeff Meldrum, but one of the world's biggest plaster cast collections. And when he talks on the subject, the field is lucky to have guys like him because it puts so much credibility. I mean, as opposed to like when I'm talking about it, like this thing comes out of a portal and then goes right back into the UFO and off it goes, man. And this happened. So it's nice to have people like that to bring some much needed credibility to the Bigfoot phenomena.
Good job.
Thank you, Michael.
Good job. So Anna, when did you first become aware of Bigfoot?
Well, I don't have a specific memory that I can pinpoint of when I became a believer of Bigfoot, but my grandmother and her husband on the property that they live on in Washington State, they have these cute little signs that are like Bigfoot Crossing and Bigfoot Lane, which maybe diminishes the
What do you mean diminishes?
the creature. But
you're saying it's not respectable to the mighty Bigfoot?
Bigfoot doesn't like kitsch.
Bigfoot's got he's got a lot of problems if he doesn't like kids.
Totally.
Because
That's prime territory, though, Washington State.
So so like it's in especially they're up in Washington.
They're
so,
up in
so that's like
Washington.
part of the culture, like Bryce is saying.
So I just feel like I grew up hearing about Bigfoot and
Old mighty Bigfoot.
sounded
Oh my God.
sounded right. I don't know.
I'm starting to go into my own personal, like, what am I doing to my kids? Like, I'm thinking, like, oh no. It's like, I have two kids. They're like, are you going to do that Bigfoot thing again, Dad? And like, yeah, I'm off to do the podcast. My son's way into Bigfoot, probably at too early of an age. But
They're like,
I mean, I do think kids, like, growing up with my parents that were super into all this, like, I'm like, yeah, that's just...
it's fun, right? It makes the
it is
world a
fun.
more mysterious place.
yeah, I mean, our kids will know what Bigfoot is, but they have no idea what a civic engineer is. They get to discover those things on their own.
Whoops.
I mean, they might rebel against it and then just believe in hardcore science and then return to it or
Right,
something
right.
like
Totally
that.
right.
But
That's what happened to me with religion. I went from God to atheist and then all the way back around to some sort of spiritual venture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild how that works, you know?
So you definitely believe in parallel universes. You were big on that.
Definitely believe in parallel universes.
What? You're very...
I feel that probably everything that ever could have happened or could happen, like, it's obviously limitless, and every version of ourselves is out there existing.
Wow.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, I really do.
When people talk about infinity and they say the universe is infinite in its depth and scope, I think a lot of times people don't actually try and wrap their head around what that means to have something be infinite. And I was hearing somebody talk about, I think it might have been Joe Rogan or something, as weird it is, but he was talking to some guy, and to explain how infinite is like if there were parallel universes and a fractal universe where other versions of you existed, I lost it.
No, you're going.
That it's so infinity is so.
Oh God!
Me. I don't
He's
know
fell
why I
into the
started
abyss
this. I'm
again.
going into the abyss.
But yeah, if for
It's
every
fell in the abyss
action,
toilet.
Yeah.
like of me taking off my coat or asking you for coffee instead of not, like if you
It's
think about all
happened
the
millions of times over. In
If only
different
you'd asked me
variations.
for coffee.
Right.
If only you had.
Oh man, I fell right into the black hole on that one.
Yeah.
What about reptilians disguising themselves as humans? You've obviously are aware of the work of David Ike.
No.
Oh, all right. Well, then let's watch
And did
this
you-
back.
See,
That's why she
this is what I
relates
mean.
it.
I've got to do more.
You don't. You
Research.
not with this. You do not need to do.
You need to read some David Icke today.
Yeah. What if after this on I totally got into David Icke?
That would be so
Hardcore.
so awesome.
Oh,
Could
God,
happen.
We broke on O'Reilly. It sucks.
David
I
Icke
know.
is like this author researcher who's pretty sure that
He's a former, I think, BCC
he's
news
a
guy.
footballer. And
then he was on BCC News. Then he kind of had like a moment where he broke and said that he was God or he was Jesus, ran around naked a little bit.
I didn't know about that.
Oh, yeah. And then he came back with...
his books describe the monarchy as being bloodlines, being reptilian overlords like the Bushes and the Queen Elizabeth, and that they're
tracing
actually,
all the way back
right,
Wow.
right.
to the ancient aliens that have enslaved humans forever.
Well,
Right.
so what about Vincent D'Onofrio's character in Men in Black? Like, doesn't that seem like, I just feel like I remember watching that when I was little and being like, oh, that's an alien, like a version of aliens I
Yes.
could believe in.
Right,
Like,
Totally.
Well, according to the
Using-
Reagan briefing, that is probably not true, but is fascinating. There's a document out there from Camp David in the 80s where apparently Reagan was briefed by his National Security Council and some people and some other people in the room who are unnamed about the 5 or 6 different alien races that the U.S. government knew about. And one of them, I believe, are called the tetroids or something. That were shape-shifting aliens that could totally look like humans, and that they were like, and he's like, "What do you mean?" Wait, you say?
Well, wait, can you repeat that?
He's like, "No." He's like, well, he was like,
Tetrahedron? What?
"Yeah," and he was like, well, how can I see one of these? He's like, no, you can't because they disguise themselves as humans. He's like, oh, he's like, I could have used some of that like makeup in Hollywood. Like he's like making some of these jokes in this manuscript, but I don't know. There is in UFO lore that there are, and not they aren't even the reptilian ones that David Icke's talking about.
I mean, they persistently stay in the conversation, don't they? Somehow,
yeah, that there are aliens walking among us, and of course, aliens that are supposed to look human, like the Nords or the Venusians, who might be walking among us as well.
We are way off the road on this podcast.
Oh, I'm just going into lore here. I'm not going into. I'm not saying any of this is fact.
Get back on track, Michael.
It's too late for that, Ronnie. Too late for that. All right. Anything else you wanted to follow up on that list?
Oh, well, maybe elves.
Oh,
Only,
did you say bullshit or believe it?
No, I think I said believe it, but I think that's more of like a, you know, when you lose something and then you find it after you clean up, and it was the elves. I don't really think I believe they're elves.
Did you grow up? Did your mom tell you that when you were a kid? Yes, that's why. Yeah, they're elves.
So I have a fondness for elves, maybe, but
well, it is December. Elf on the Shelf is very popular right now.
It's wild what that does to kids.
God, I know. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That would have terrified me. Sidebar. When I was in kindergarten, our teacher, Dave Keith, and I had the same kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Lukert. She would tell us about Sean the leprechaun, who was coming to visit the classroom throughout March. Oh. And all month long, February, she'd be like, Sean is coming to visit. And when he comes here, you better behave yourself because Sean is magical and Sean is watching you. And I mean, this should not be allowed. You know, I mean, she thought she was being cool, but it terrified me. And I would lay awake at night rationalizing, like, maybe it's her husband coming and he's going to be like a puppet and he's going to hide behind shelves. Like, I was trying to think this. And then one day we walk into the classroom and I look up, and on one of the cabinets is this super vintage, creepy looking leprechaun perched on top of the cabinet, staring out into space.
This is starting to explain a lot.
And I dropped my bag, and the first thing I frozen in terror. Obviously a doll, but I was like, "Is it?" And Mrs. Luker, my teacher, goes, "He's watching you, Michael." And we were told that we were not allowed to touch him because if we touched him, he would disappear forever. Oh. So on top of the fear was this anxiety that I had the power to destroy a leprechaun if my curiosity got the best of me.
I'm getting a good insight.
Wow.
And I remember, like, I'd go up to sharpen my pencil and look up on the shelf, and I'd be like, and Mrs. Luger would stop what she's doing. She'd go, "Don't do it, Michael." And I'd be like, and I'd run back to my chair. And
Wait, how old were you?
Kindergarten. I was like 5 or 6.
Amazing.
And every day we would come into March, and he'd be in a different place in the room, totally like the Elf on the Shelf thing.
Yeah.
And it terrified me.
Wow, that's amazing.
Oh boy.
Wow, so what is this generation of children that's had Elf on the Shelf? What
totally.
is that doing
It's
to them?
really gonna cause some problems because Santa's real kids.
There's a lot of
Santa's
kids
real
that listen to
kids.
this podcast.
Yeah, there might be. But you know, Santa was hard enough to deal with. Speaking of Santa and little creatures, it is that time of year, as Bryce said. And when we come back, I'm gonna have this week's story of high strangeness.
Segue. Right?
Yeah.
It's a good segue.
That was good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, get ready for this one.
Okay.
Shit's gonna get wild. I'm delivering on a long-standing promise
Hell
here on the
yeah.
BCC.
Fucking drop it, dude.
Tonight, we're talking about the Porterville Gnome.
Boom.
I discovered I was really into gnomes a while ago, and I said that there's a really good gnome story that I found. And I have to say that a lot of this story comes from the work of one man on the internet, Jason Ofolt, who everyone seems to cross-reference this story from an article that he wrote for the Mysterious Universe website.
Which I love.
Yeah, which is a great website. Lots of good stories there. And this one is actually, I don't know. We'll see how you feel about it. All right, ready? Porterville, California is located in the San Joaquin Valley in Tulare County, about halfway between Bakersfield and Fresno. Now, do you know where this is?
Yeah, of course.
It's not too far from where you grew
Yeah.
up.
I
Now,
actually spent a lot of time there growing up.
do you really?
Yeah, that's where it's on the way to Shaver Lake.
Whoa. Oh, yeah, we keep talking about going up to Shaver Lake.
My childhood stomp.
Wow. Well, what do you know? So our story begins at a farmhouse. Oh, I said Tulare County. It's Tulane County. Hold on. Stop.
No, it's Tulare.
It's Tulare, right?
Yeah, for
okay,
sure.
good. All right, cool.
You liar.
I'm a liar.
Tulare?
All right, we'll clean that up.
No, we won't.
Okay.
That's fine.
So it begins at a farmhouse near the Tulare River where a single mother, a widow, had moved her 3 children. Tammy Thomas told Mysterious Universe reporter Jason Offord that the family always had a feeling of being watched at this house. And one area in particular on the property gave her the creeps. The old shed. Now, something about that old shack gave everyone a feeling of dread. Not even any of the animals, their dogs, chickens, any of the cats would go near the place. And the family even began hearing footsteps at night, running around the house, causing weird sounds in the yard. And after a while, Tammy became so uneasy that she would not allow her children to play outside after dark. One night in 1999, Tammy came home from the grocery store with her 7-year-old grandson, Gavin. And as they were unloading the car, Gavin wandered away. Tammy found him staring at the shed, where, standing in the shadows, they saw a lurking creature that Tammy described looking like an evil garden gnome.
Ooh.
With a salt and pepper beard, black pants, gold shirt, and a pointed maroon hat. It had a grin from ear to ear, a large bulbous nose, and deep-set eyes that Gavin the child swore glowed red. The being cackled at her and the boy as she rushed her grandson inside. Good. They could hear the laughter surrounding the house as the gnome stalked the yard and peered into their windows. Now, this torment continued a few nights later while Tammy and Gavin were watching TV. Tammy heard the sounds of pottery shattering outside. She went out into the yard to investigate and found that her garden had been upturned and her potted plants had been destroyed. A strange cackling could be heard in the distance. And that night forward, the stalking, the laughing, strange sounds around the yard continued. Until finally, Tammy saved up enough money and moved her family away from the farmhouse and its mysterious impish resident. Now, let's talk about gnomes for a minute.
Sure.
Well, what about the people that moved in after?
Story's
Dead.
not done yet.
Oh.
All of them.
They all died of gnome disease. So gnomes first appeared in the ancient texts of alchemist Paracelsus, who was in the 1500s. He was an alchemist and a healer who defined gnomes as earth elementals that can move through solid rock the way that we can move through the air, which is a little fascinating because it kind of sounds like interdimensional beings or aliens that move through walls or move people through walls in abductions.
You know I vibe with that.
I know you do, baby. Now, the Hudson Valley gnomes are pretty famous gnomes that, according to legend, Henry Hudson, while exploring upstate New York, encountered these gnomes in the Catskill Mountains. Elemental entities that the Iroquois tribe told tales of. We covered this actually on a Patreon campfire story that Bryce, you were out of town for. But this was the legend that directly inspired Washington Irving's tale of Rip Van Winkle. And it, too, also has as much in common with modern UFO abduction as it does fairy tales, that these creatures invite you into their party, they make you drink their food, you get really drunk and drowsy, and then missing time happens. You don't know what's happened after that.
Strange parallels.
And the Catskill Gnomes were said to have a forge in deep set in the mountains, and the native tribes would see bright lights out in the mountains where they claimed the little people were having their parties and forging ore in the mountains. You may recall the Dover Demon from Massachusetts in 1976, a tale of teenage kids over the course of a few nights coming across a diminutive figure in the night. And the Cree tribe of Canada had a name for those types of trickster spirits called the Managishi. And they were said to be 4 feet tall with spindly arms and legs and large heads. And we've covered all this on the show, but I just kind of want to...
Check our backlog.
Yeah, check the backlog and remind people there is some context for some of these types of encounters. And more recently, in Latin America, during the mid and late 2000s, there was a wave of YouTube videos popping up allegedly depicting duendes, which are Latin American gnomes appearing at night around groups of people who are often out like celebrating or playing soccer. A lot of these can probably be debunked, but there are a few creepy videos out there that kind of match what the experience here in Porterville sounds like.
I'd like to see some of those for sure.
I'll put a link on it on the show notes. So back to Tammy. Now, time passed, but Tammy never forgot the strange events in that Porterville house. She eventually turned to the sweet comfort of the internet, posted her experience on the Mysterious Universe website, which is how she was eventually got in touch with the author, Jason Offolt. And he took note of her story. And meanwhile, he found another woman named Charlie, last name unknown, who started blogging about her own weird gnome encounter at a farmhouse near the river, the Tulare River. In 2010, Charlie, this other woman, and her husband and twin girls moved into a farmhouse and built a garden and a koi pond that Charlie decorated with a gnome and fairy lawn ornaments. The place was perfectly peaceful when they moved in, except for one thing. There was an old shed near the house that really gave Charlie the creeps.
That shed.
None of the animals would go near it. And things took a dark turn one evening when Charlie and her husband were at home and they heard what sounded like a cat being attacked by an animal, a much larger animal outside. Noise, of course, was coming from the shed. Charlie's husband ran to investigate, brought a flashlight, and found a dead cat with half its face skinned off and its neck bitten into. He stepped outside to catch his breath and collect himself, and when he turned back around, the cat was gone. The dead cat had vanished.
Oh.
So they thought that was strange, creeped them out. And then, not long after that, one night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, Charlie claims she and her husband awoke to the sounds of a weird gurgling, singing, coming from their front yard. They looked out their bedroom window to see a small man, 2 to 3 feet tall, with a salt and pepper beard, holding a lawn ornament in one hand and eating a koi fish out of their pond from their other hand.
Awesome.
Charlie said the little man was dressed in maroon pants, a baggy yellow shirt, a brown vest, a dark waistcoat, and a reddish-brown pointed hat. And he had jagged teeth and small beady eyes. Charlie's husband opened the window and told the gnome to leave or he'd call the police, and the creature just looked up at him, smiled, and flipped him the bird.
Yes.
Fuck yeah.
No one knows how to party.
The cops showed up at 4 a.m., and all they could find were tiny footprints about the size of a child's in the earth around the house. So the koi fish keep getting eaten. And eventually, Charlie and her husband take all the lawn ornaments down. They take the gnome down. They bring the fish inside the house and put it in a tank. And that was a really big mistake because the night they did that, they started hearing a screaming and an angry scream and all this noise in the front yard. And they looked outside to see this little guy ranting and raving and trashing their yard and screaming at them because he wanted the fish and the lawn ornaments back. Charlie claimed that, I may have said Tammy a second ago, I meant Charlie. Charlie claimed that she realized that the dog door was open, so she ran down in the kitchen to close the dog door, and this thing was apparently at the windows, and they could see it peering into the windows at them. So after that night, they were out of there immediately. They got out of the house, sold the house, and I think they moved out before they even sold the house.
I love when I hear those types of stories. They moved. That's like
they
smart
moved.
family.
Oh, they got out of there immediately after that night.
What would happen if someone rebuilt the shed?
Great question.
Well, so listen. Noting how similar Tammy and Charlie's stories were, Jason Offel put the two women in touch. And after comparing notes, they discovered that, yep, they had been living in the same house.
What?
They even met up and drove out to the property together, where they discovered that the shed had been torn down.
Oh, my goodness.
They claimed an eeriness still lingered over the property, and when they went to the front door to talk to the new owner, she turned them away and said she didn't want to talk. She wouldn't talk to them at all. She wasn't interested in sharing any stories that she, too, may have encountered in that house. And that is the story of the Porterville Gnome.
Boom.
Ooh.
That was awesome, dude.
But so do we think the gnomes are affiliated with that structural house or that piece of land?
Good question.
We're going to talk about that when we come back in our next
Because you're going to
segment.
tell us what the hell was that.
And I was wrong. It's the Tool River, not the Tool... Not whatever. Tulare River. It's the Tool River.
Ruins the whole story.
T-U-L-E.
Mike.
I messed up.
We had such a nice tension going.
Jesus.
I messed up. It's the Tulare River, the Tool River. Sometimes I type too fast.
There goes the credibility.
Well,
right out the window.
Hey, I'm up front when I fuck up.
We'll be right back.
I don't like it. So that's the story of the Porterville Gnome. I mean, look, this is one of those stories that like is really hard to believe at all, but I do find it fascinating that two families that lived in the same house, 10 years apart at least, had a similar experience and sort of found each other through sharing these stories on the internet. Now maybe the whole thing is creepypasta. I don't think so. I did watch an episode of, Monsters and Myths in America, that Destination America show, where they covered at least Tammy's story on it. So she's on camera. There is a real woman out there and her grandson, Gavin, both telling this story on camera. So they claimed it happened. Man. But yeah, so what was your question before we went?
Well, my question was whether in folklore of gnomes, do we think they're affiliated with the structures on the land if they're moving through walls and such, or is it the land and the river?
Well, I think the river might have a big thing to do with it because
of the Iroquois.
Well, I don't know if this is in, where was this? This is in California, so I don't know what native tribes would be out there, but
area.
So,
but the Iroquois in the Hudson, like that was by a river, right?
Yes. And so here's the thing. There's a common theme that runs through these stories. We've talked about this a bunch on the show. Linda S. Godfrey's a big proprietor of this, that oftentimes where there is high activity of the paranormal kind, there's usually some type of body of water nearby running through. And some people think that a natural body of water acts as some type of energy stream and perhaps even allows a sort of as a portal, right, between one world and the next. Gnomes are one of those things. It's like, well, who knows? Who knows what this is? This is just super weird. It's weird that it looked like a garden gnome, if we're taking their word for it. Like maybe there's a weird, creepy old dude living in their shed.
And it begs the question, what came first? The appearance of these creatures wearing the pointy hats or garden gnomes,
Right.
What came first?
They said that the depiction of the gnomes with the kind of the pointy hats and all that stuff became much more popular in the late 19th century. That's when they started to really kind of take on the that sort of Santa Claus appearance that we have today. Also around the time that Santa Claus started looking the way he did was in the 1920s, early, like what the Coca-Cola company has basically designed the fat round Santa that we think of now, on the heels of The Night Before Christmas, that poem. But so it's weird because for a long time gnomes were kind of seen as like the goblins or these ethereal spirits, but they've really only, I think, been for the past 130, 40 years kind of depicted that the way that they are now. I think that's a more modern invention of there, but I don't know, because they also talk about. I remember Graham Hancock speaking about magic mushroom and the red cap of the mushroom and the white body of the mushroom. How or maybe this was not Graham Hancock. This was in a book called, I think, Shroom, and I can't remember the author, but that the appearance of these red-capped elves and like Santa also mirror that of the red-capped mushrooms that can lead to hallucinogenic experiences with other realities. So there's some kind of link there as well.
Terrence McKenna does a great job of explaining the lore of Santa Claus and the elves and the magic mushroom and the reindeers that eat these mushrooms and all that stuff. There's a whole connection there.
Yeah.
Wild.
I don't know. And they show up there's trolls and gnomes are really big in Scandinavia, and they tend to be near bodies of water and the mountains and that kind of stuff. So they seem to have this element. There's this elemental thing about them. The other thing in the late 19th century, they were saying, I was doing research, that that's really kind of when they started to become more of the there you have fairies and you have gnomes, that they kind of took their place in the sort of fairy tale version of they're sort of the little ground versions of what fairies are, who fly through the air. But
wow,
I don't know. It's a weird. What do you think this is? You think these women actually saw a creepy old little guy in their yard?
I feel like we're all sensitive to different energies or beings, like gnomes or fairies or whatever, and a highly sensitive person could experience one but not the other. So. Or not at all,
Absolutely.
But I'm curious about that 2 women in a row. Then is it about these gnome creatures finding, is it coincidence that those women in a row were at the same property? Would it be that anyone who lived at that property would have it, or it just happened to be 2 women who also have that sort of part of themselves open to the gnome energy?
I think it's like what you were saying before. It has something to do with that shed, that property, that specific location.
I mean, and that shed was clearly torn down. So whoever moved in after that, if we're taking the word or taking the story at face value, clearly it was like, shut this shit down. Let's go to the shed.
Right? Yeah.
Why would they destroy the shed before moving? Is such a big deal.
Well, I don't know. Maybe some people are like, this is my house.
Right.
Think of all the people who don't evacuate when there's natural disasters. It's their house.
Right.
It's their property, and there's a little man on it. Let's close off his access to this place. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. It's a fun story. It's a
true story.
Yeah, it's fucking fact. I can't remember the name of the river. I didn't write it down correctly, but I don't know.
How creepy was that dog door part, though? I could just totally see that thing coming in the dog door. I'm like, no, get out of there.
It's a little like...
She's racing to the dog door just as the gnome hand is reaching through.
Yeah.
The reenactments on this TV show were a little unfortunate. It was a little leprechaun.
Remember the movie Cat's Eye? The little gnome that stole the breath?
Yeah.
And it came through the hole in the door.
Sits on your chest.
Oh, sits on your chest and sucks your breath out.
Oh, never saw it.
It was great.
What?
Yeah, Steve Stephen King's Cat's Eye. It's like a
It's one of his coke-laden manifestos.
yeah, but it's like it has like 3-4 different stories within the movie, right? It kind of like
yeah.
It was great.
Oh, they're creepy.
Yeah.
Gnomes always scared me. I had nightmares about gnomes. I had
Really?
nightmares
That
about
is so funny.
little creatures in pointed hats showing up and
Yeah,
not leaving me alone.
but
I
no,
was also really scared of gnomes. The movie Leprechaun I saw when I was a kid,
yeah.
and it just stuck.
I know. And then that movie Troll in the base when was lived in the basement near the washer and the dryer. Oh my god!
You know, a movie of any that is kind of unexpected. But when I was a kid, but you guys see Ernest Scared Stupid when you were a kid?
No, I didn't.
Scared
There's a little
the
past
fuck
my
out of
time.
It destroyed my childhood. There's this one scene where the little kid's in bed and then I don't know if it's a little boy or a little girl, but he rolls over and there's a little gnome creature just laying right next to him. It's like,
Whoa!
and that like to this day, I'm like, I don't want to roll over.
I was always worried about looking down at the end of the sheets by my feet and seeing a little face appear down. I was always scared there was a little creature down past my feet.
Well,
Maybe you need to reprogram with watching Amelie and the really adorable gnome. Do you remember that?
There's a cute gnome in
Yeah,
Amelie.
remember the storyline of the gnome that she like has her stewardess friend take the gnome and then place him in exotic places.
Travelocity
and then
stole
the
that
dad,
and made a campaign out of it.
yeah.
right. You know, it's so interesting because Graham Hancock in his book Supernatural lays out a tremendous case for, you know, how the parallels run across with kind of these, like you were saying, these gnomes and these fairies and alien abductions, and how the paradigm kind of changes as culture moves on and society goes forward. You know what I mean? There's some sort of intelligence that seems to, you know, kind of change shape and change character and put on a different mask, you know? Is there a relation there with all that stuff? And I don't know. It's creepy because, you know, in a lot of those, I think, gnome tales, it's like you were saying, and especially ones, the fairies, they would get around in these fairy circles. And if you stumbled upon that fairy circle, you know, which they would not be happy and they would bring you in. And you could experience what would be like missing time, and sometimes, which was even more scary, is those they didn't send you back. Like most abduction cases now, you get placed, thankfully, back into your bed, and missing time doesn't run for more than a couple hours, hopefully at the most. But back then, you know, a couple hundred years back, missing time could run for days, even years.
Yikes.
Creepy.
What? So yeah. All right. Bottom line, Ahna O'Reilly. You hear a story like this. What do you think?
I think I'd love to talk to Tammy.
Got a few more questions.
Tammy.
Love to have coffee with Tammy and Charlie.
Yes, for sure.
I'd say I lean towards yes because two people moved away from that house.
Right.
Yeah, that's some.
And I
real
think
shit.
moving is serious business.
Amen.
What's weird about it to me is just the juxtaposition of like such a medieval looking fairy tale creature in the modern world is strange. You know, it's a tricky story. There wasn't a lot to cross reference. You know, in some versions it was Gavin. She was with her, you know, it's like, I'm not sure about the timeline on some of this stuff. She moved there with her children, but then she's also, her grandson is there. So I don't know. Some of that was a little inconsistent.
Semantics.
This is why I'm getting mixed up with in some of my research. But basically, like, yeah, these two women and families, you know, saw this little guy. So I don't know. It's weird. And there are other stories like this in America of like people witnessing often around barns and stuff, little strange men. And there's a really brief story from Liberty, Missouri, actually, about a little boy who remembers a small man with a pipe who used to look in his window with a pointed hat, him and his brother's window at a farmhouse out in Liberty. And he's an artist. And when he grew up, he started painting pictures of it. And when he showed it to his younger brother, his brother, who was like a toddler at the time and he never spoke about it with, his brother freaked out and was like, that's the face that used to look in our window. Oh, which is really, really weird.
Why does shit always got to look in the window?
I know.
What the fuck is with
You
that?
just go knock on the door.
I know.
Or, I don't know.
I guess that's better than showing up at the foot of your bed.
FaceTime
Or through the dog door. That's
yeah,
really
right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, make a good point.
Yeah.
Better than the dog door.
All right. Well, Ahna, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for
This
having
went by
me,
really
guys.
fast.
God, awesome.
Loved it.
Do you have anything you want to plug for our listeners? I know you do a lot of charity work too. Is there anything you want to...
that's so nice of you. I mean, I love UNICEF Next Generation for spreading the word of UNICEF to our generation of folks.
Awesome.
That's my big one.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. And then
Thanks.
Anything coming up or coming out down the pipeline?
I'm working right now on something, but I don't know when it comes out, so I don't
All right.
feel like I need to plug
Just go to IMDb and go. You can get all of your movies on Netflix. I feel like you can probably watch a million things.
iTunes.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Spotify.
iTunes. Riley, anything to plug?
I mean, I feel like a jerk plugging things after she plugged UNICEF. So
No, you're all right.
yeah, I think
Keep your mouth shut.
I think I'm good this time. No plugs for me.
Well, I'll just say, if you'd like to a more definitive explanation of infinity, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'd be happy to answer any and all questions you might have.
We should just set up a Twitter account for you called Bryce. Bryce describes infinity.
That is a new segment.
Yeah, we'll give you a shot every episode from now on to see if we can get do a better job of
Bryce's Quantum World.
It's like the saddest Epcot ride you've ever been on. Thanks for listening to the show, everybody. Please, if you like the show and you want to support us, please go to the Patreon campaign and support us there. Unlock reward multiple bonus episodes like the one that we're just putting up this week about the premiere that we went to, or the Catskill Gnome story from the Campfire Stories. It's all, there's a lot more BCC waiting for you there. Thank you for listening to the show. And email us, BigfootCollectorsClub@gmail.com, and call this number that Riley's going to tell you. Leave us a voicemail. Keep it brief. We love you guys and we love your stories, but kind of got to keep it to 2 minutes. Otherwise, we can't really air it, or you might get cut off from the voicemail. Sorry.
Anyways, that number is 310-597-4803.
And I'll put that in the show notes as well. Okay, guys. Great. That's it. You guys want to say goodbye? Bryce, why don't you take us out on a slow fade? Riley will start slowly turning down the volume as you describe infinity.
So infinity is like something you can't even imagine because it's infinite. So imagine that you have a lot of you, like an infinite number of you. Every time you do something, Fractal Universe creates another infinite version. You should have been out this show. Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray. Our theme song is Come Alone by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes. It really helps get the podcast to more listeners. To support the show, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Bigfoot Collectors Club and unlock multiple reward episodes every month.